remember exactly where I was standing when Coach Travis laughed at my son. I was behind the chain-link fence at Riverside Youth Soccer Complex, clutching my work apron because I'd driven straight from my shift at Marina's Diner. Eli stood in the center of the field. His teammates scattered around him in their bright blue uniforms. His shoes, those worn-out sneakers with a split sole and frayed laces, sat in his hands like evidence of everything we didn't have. He'd been explaining to the coach why he couldn't do the sprint drills properly. The sole kept flapping open, catching on the grass. Coach Travis looked down at those shoes, then at Eli. Then he threw his head back and laughed. Not a chuckle. A full, cruel laugh that echoed across the field. Other kids started laughing too. I watched my son's face turn red. His shoulders curl inward. His eyes drop to the ground. That was the moment everything changed. Not because of what the coach did, but because of what I saw in Eli's eyes when he finally looked up. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was determination. That was the day my son stopped smiling after practice. The ride home felt longer than usual. Eli sat in the back seat, staring out the window with those ruined sneakers in his lap. I kept glancing at him through the rearview mirror, trying to find the right words. What do you say to your child when the world humiliates them for being poor? When their effort isn't enough because they don't have the right equipment? I finally broke the silence. Eli, baby, I'm so sorry. I'll figure something out. Maybe next month I can. He cut me off gently. It's okay, Mom. I'll just run faster. My heart cracked right there in that car. He was 10 years old, holding torn shoes, and already learning to make excuses for a system that failed him. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. Not in front of him. When we pulled into our apartment complex, I watched him walk toward the building. His back was straight. His head was up. And I realized something that terrified and amazed me at the same time. My son wasn't broken by what happened. He was planning. I caught his reflection in the glass door, and I saw a boy already plotting to prove them wrong. 2 days later, I found Eli behind our apartment building. It was raining, that cold autumn drizzle that soaks through everything. I'd gotten home from my morning shift and noticed his backpack on the couch, but no Eli. Panic set in until I looked out the kitchen window. There he was, in the muddy patch of grass we called a backyard, dribbling a half-flat soccer ball between orange cones made from plastic cups. His shoes were completely soaked. His hair dripped water into his eyes. But he didn't stop. He moved with focus I'd never seen before, practicing turns and passes like his life depended on it. I stood there watching, my heart in my throat, realizing that his drive came from pain. This wasn't about loving soccer anymore. This was about survival. About proving he belonged. I wanted to run out and pull him inside, wrap him in a warm towel, tell him he didn't need to prove anything to anyone. But I didn't. 'Cause I understood. I'd spent my whole life trying to prove I was enough too. Then I saw it. Black SUV slowed down on the street. Coach Travis sat in the driver's seat, window down, watching Eli practice in the rain. The next game was on Saturday. Eli arrived early, stretching on the sideline with that quiet intensity he'd developed. I sat in the bleachers with my thermos of coffee, surrounded by other parents in their expensive activewear and branded gear. When the whistle blew and the starting lineup was announced, Eli's name wasn't called. He stood on the sideline, confused. I watched him glance at Coach Travis, who deliberately looked away. Quarter after quarter passed. Eli didn't play a single minute. Other kids rotated in and out, even the ones who barely tried during practice. But not Eli. After the game, which we won easily, Coach Travis gathered the team. He clapped Eli on the shoulder and said loudly, "Good job warming that bench, kiddo. Every team needs a solid bench warmer." The other kids laughed. Some parents chuckled too. Eli's face went blank, that terrible blankness kids get when they're trying not to cry in public. I realized then it wasn't about skill or effort. It was personal. Coach Travis was punishing my son for being poor, for making the team look cheap with his worn-out shoes. Humiliation disguised as coaching. I stood to leave, and that's when I overheard him. Coach Travis, talking to another parent near the parking lot, said clearly, "Kids like him make the team look cheap." Over the next few weeks, I started noticing patterns. During drop-off, certain parents would linger near Coach Travis's car. They'd chat casually, then slip him an envelope or mention a donation they'd made. Those kids always got starting positions. They got praised during practice. They got extra coaching time. The kids whose parents couldn't afford those donations sat on the bench. It wasn't about talent. It was about money. I watched a mother named Patricia hand Coach Travis what looked like cash in a handshake. Her son Brandon, who could barely kick straight, started every game. Meanwhile, Eli practiced twice as hard and barely got 5 minutes of field time. Felt sick. This wasn't youth soccer. This was corruption dressed up in shin guards and team photos. One afternoon, I was sitting near a group of parents when one of them, a woman with perfectly highlighted hair, leaned over and whispered to her friend, "Pay to play, honey. That's how the world works." She said it like it was normal, like buying your kids playing time was just part of parenting. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled politely and walked away, my hands shaking with anger I couldn't afford to show. Not yet. Eli's birthday came in October. He turned 11 on a Tuesday. I'd saved up a little money and asked if he wanted a party, maybe invite some teammates over. He looked at me with those serious eyes and said, "I don't want them to see where we live." That sentence destroyed me. He was ashamed. Not of me, not of himself, but of our tiny 2-bedroom apartment with a leaky faucet and mismatched furniture. He was ashamed because other kids lived in houses with pools and finished basements. Because their birthday parties had bounce houses and catered food. We celebrated quietly. Just us, a grocery store cake, and 11 candles. He blew them out without making a wish. That night I couldn't sleep. I got up for water and noticed a light under Eli's door. I pushed it open gently and found him at his desk, writing in a notebook. Page after page of soccer drills, tactics, diagrams of plays. At the bottom of one page, written in his careful handwriting, were the words, "I'll beat them with what I've got." I backed out of the room before he saw me. I went to my bedroom and cried into my pillow, amazed and heartbroken by the child I was raising. A promise written in a notebook by a boy who refused to quit. During a game in early November, something unexpected happened. Brandon, the coach's favorite, fumbled a pass near the goal. The other team recovered and nearly scored. Coach Travis yelled from the sideline, frustrated. Eli, sitting on the bench as usual, leaned over to another substitute named Tyler. I was close enough to hear him quietly coaching. "When Brandon gets the ball again, you move left. He always kicks right. Be ready." 2 minutes later, exactly what Eli predicted happened. Tyler followed his advice, intercepted the pass and scored. The parents erupted in cheers. Some of them turned to look at the bench, confused. They'd seen the exchange. They'd watched Eli coach Tyler into position. For the first time, people noticed. Not Coach Travis, though. He stormed over to the bench, leaning down close to Eli's face. I couldn't hear the exact words, but I read his lips clearly. "Stay in your lane, kid." Eli nodded, said nothing, but I saw his jaw tighten. The game ended with a win, and parents congratulated Coach Travis like he'd done something brilliant. Nobody mentioned Eli. Nobody except one father who caught my eye and nodded, like he'd seen what really happened. That small acknowledgement felt like oxygen. I worked the evening shift at Marina's Diner 3 nights a week. The tips weren't great, but it kept us afloat. One Thursday night, I was refilling coffee when I heard familiar voices in the booth behind me. 2 soccer parents, Diane and Troy, talking in low tones. I slowed down, pretending to wipe down the counter nearby. "I'm telling you," Diane said, "the fundraiser money doesn't add up. We raised almost $8,000 for new equipment. Where is it?" Troy sighed. "Coach Travis said he'd handle the books. Maybe he's just slow processing it." "For 3 months. Diane's voice sharpened. "My husband's an accountant. He offered to help. Travis shut him down fast. My heart started pounding. I kept wiping the same spot on the counter, ears straining. Maybe we're overthinking it, Troy said. He's a volunteer coach. Why would he? A volunteer coach who just bought a brand new Audi, Diane interrupted. You do the math. They left shortly after, but those words stayed with me. I thought about the envelopes, the donations, the fancy car. I thought about Eli on the bench while less talented kids played. Suddenly it wasn't just unfair. It was criminal. That night I started keeping notes. Dates, amounts, conversations I'd overheard. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but something told me I'd need proof eventually. One parent had whispered it clearly. Coach Travis said he'd handle the books. Maybe too well. It happened during a Tuesday practice. Eli was running drills, pushing himself harder than anyone else, when his right shoe finally gave up completely. The sole separated from the upper, flapping open like a mouth. He stumbled, caught himself, and stood there holding his foot awkwardly. Coach Travis walked over, looked down, and started laughing. Again. That same cruel laugh from before. Looks like your shoe is trying to talk, Eli, he announced loudly. Maybe it's begging for retirement. Team laughed. Eli's face burned red. Coach Travis pointed toward the equipment shed. Go check the lost and found. Maybe someone left a pair that'll fit your charity case feet. Eli walked slowly toward the shed, and I watched from the parking lot, my fingernails digging into my palms. He came back empty-handed. Practice continued with him sitting on the sideline. When I picked him up, he didn't say a word. At home, he placed the destroyed shoes carefully on the kitchen table. He stared at them for a long moment, then said quietly, "They did their best." That sentence broke something in me. He wasn't angry at the shoes. He was grateful. Grateful to inanimate objects that had carried him as far as they could. I hugged him tightly, and he let me, which he rarely did anymore. That night, I lay in bed and made a plan. Somehow, someway I would get him new cleats. Picked up extra shifts. I skipped lunches. I returned the jacket I'd bought myself the month before. By mid-November I'd saved $83. Soccer cleats cost at least $60. Could do this. I could finally buy my son something new, something that wouldn't embarrass him, something that said, "You matter." Then the letter came. Medical bill from Eli's emergency room visit over the summer when he'd broken his finger during a game. Insurance covered most of it, but we still owed $217. Immediate payment required. I sat at the kitchen table staring at that bill, then at my small stack of cash. Had to pay it. There was no choice. The $83 went into an envelope, along with a payment plan request for the rest. The cleats would have to wait. Again. I put my head down on that table and cried. Cried because I was tired. I cried because no matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. I cried because my son deserved better and I couldn't give it to him. I didn't hear Eli come into the kitchen. I didn't know he was there until I felt his small hand on my shoulder. I looked up, tears streaming down my face, trying to wipe them away. He hugged me tightly and whispered, "It's okay, Mom. You already gave me what I need." I held on to him and wondered how I'd raised a child so much stronger than me. 2 weeks later, Coach Travis showed up to Saturday practice in a brand new silver Audi. Not used. Temporary plates, dealer stickers still on the windows, leather interior you could smell from across the parking lot. He parked right in front, made sure everyone saw it. "Early Christmas present to myself," he announced, grinning wide. "Hard work pays off, kids. Remember that." Parents gathered around, admiring it, asking questions. Some congratulated him. Others exchanged glances. I stood apart watching, my mind racing. Volunteer coaches don't make money. The fundraiser money was missing. The donations kept flowing into his pocket. And now this. I wasn't the only one thinking it. I saw Diane taking a photo of the car with her phone. I saw Troy shaking his head slowly. The whispers were growing louder. That night, I pulled out my folder of notes. I added the date and a description of the car. I started searching online for public records, fundraiser disclosures, anything that might show where the money went. I wasn't a detective. I was just a tired mom who'd had enough. But I was methodical. I documented everything. Screenshots, receipts I'd seen posted in the team's Facebook group, emails about donations that parents had forwarded. Piece by piece I built a case. I didn't know when I'd use it. I just knew I would. The coach's new car was parked in front of everyone. A symbol of success built on stolen trust. At the next team meeting, another parent tried to confront Coach Travis. Her name was Nicole, and her son had been on the team for 3 years. She stood up during the parent discussion and asked directly, "Can we get a breakdown of how the fundraiser money was spent? Some of us are confused about the budget." Coach Travis's smile didn't waver. "Of course, Nicole. I've been working on a full report. These things take time, you know. Lots of receipts to organize." "It's been 4 months," she pressed. "I understand and I appreciate your diligence," he said smoothly. "But I have to say, it's a little concerning when parents question the integrity of volunteers who give their time freely. Makes you wonder about their motives." The room went silent. Nicole's face flushed. Other parents looked away, uncomfortable. Just like that he'd flipped it. Made her look like the problem. Nicole sat down embarrassed. The meeting moved on. Afterward, as people filed out, Coach Travis walked past me. He stopped, leaned in close enough that only I could hear, and said, "Single moms should worry about their own kids, not mine." He smiled, patted my shoulder like we were friends, and walked away. I stood there, shaking with rage I couldn't show. But I also felt something else. Clarity. This man wasn't just corrupt. He was dangerous. And he'd just made a terrible mistake. He'd underestimated me. Eli started waking up at 5:30 every morning. I'd hear his alarm, then the soft sound of him getting dressed in the dark. By 6, he'd be outside running laps around our apartment complex. I'd watch from the window with my coffee, amazed and worried. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for anything. He just trained. Before school, after school, weekends. He ran in his torn shoes with cardboard stuffed inside to cover the holes. He practiced dribbling with our half-flat ball. He studied soccer videos on my old phone during lunch breaks. He wasn't chasing the coach's approval anymore. He was chasing something bigger. Excellence. Proof. Vindication. One morning, I asked him why he kept pushing himself when the coach barely let him play. He tied his shoelaces, looked up at me with those serious eyes and said, "I don't want to beat them, Mom. I want to make them watch." That sentence gave me chills. My 10-year-old son had clarity most adults never find. He understood that the best revenge wasn't anger. It was undeniable skill. I kissed his forehead and watched him jog away into the gray morning light. And I made my own decision. If he was going to fight this battle with everything he had, then so was I. I pulled out my folder of evidence and started organizing it properly. Dates, dollar amounts, names. Everything documented and ready, just in case. In late November, the league announced a charity match. It was a big deal. Local news coverage, corporate sponsors, even college scouts. The game would be played at the main stadium downtown, with proceeds going to youth sports programs. Every team sent their best players. Coach Travis gathered our team and announced his roster. 8 starters, 4 substitutes. He read the names slowly, making a show of it. Eli's name wasn't called. He stood there, hands in his pockets, face blank. I watched from the bleachers, my heart sinking. After the announcement, parents and players scattered. I found Eli sitting alone on a bench, staring at the field. I sat beside him. "I'm sorry, baby." He shrugged. "That's okay, Mom. I'll be there anyway." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm on the team," he said simply. "Even if I'm not playing, I'll be there. Maybe someone will need me." His logic was flawless and heartbreaking. He'd accepted his role as the invisible player, the backup who cheered from the sidelines. But there was something in his voice, a quiet confidence that made me think he knew something I didn't. The charity match was in 2 weeks. I marked it on our calendar. I didn't know it then, but that game would change everything. Not just for Eli. For all of us. The day of the charity match arrived cold and bright. The stadium was bigger than any field we'd played on before. Banners hung from the fences, sponsor logos everywhere. A press table set up near the entrance. Parents filled the stands, dressed in team colors. I sat in the middle section, clutching my jacket around me. Eli was on the bench in his uniform, looking tiny next to the starting players. Warm-ups began. I watched the starters run drills, showing off for the crowd. Then it happened. Brandon, one of Coach Travis's favorites, went up for a header and landed awkwardly. He crumpled to the ground, clutching his ankle. Parents gasped. The trainer rushed over. After a few minutes, it was clear. Brandon couldn't play. Coach Travis looked furious. He scanned the bench, clearly calculating who he could substitute. His eyes landed on Eli. He didn't look happy about it. Eli, you're in. Don't mess this up. Eli stood quickly, grabbing his water bottle. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. Others looked confused. This was the kid who barely played. Coach Travis was really scraping the bottom of the bench. Eli jogged onto the field. He bent down to tighten his laces. And that's when I saw it. The sole of his right shoe was separating again. As he stood, it tore completely, flapping open. He froze. The whistle was about to blow. And my son had no shoes that worked. I didn't think. Just moved. I ran down the bleachers, jumped the low fence, and sprinted across the sideline. Eli! He turned, confused. I was already pulling off my sneakers. Old, scuffed white sneakers with pink rubber soles and frayed laces. I'd worn them to every one of his games. They were too big for him, but they were whole. Wear these, I said, breathless. He stared at me. Mom, these are. I know, I interrupted. But they'll work. Just play. The crowd had noticed. People were standing, pointing, murmuring. Some laughed. A woman behind me whispered loudly. Is that his mom's shoes? Oh my God. Eli looked at the shoes, then at me. Something shifted in his face. Not embarrassment. Resolve. He slipped them on quickly, double knotting the laces. They were loose, but they held. He looked at me one more time, smiled softly and said, They'll do. Then he jogged onto the field wearing my pink-soled sneakers. The crowd's laughter grew louder. Coach Travis put his head in his hands. Other players smirked. But Eli didn't look back. He took his position. The referee raised the whistle. And the game began. The first 10 minutes were chaos. The other team was aggressive, fast, skilled. Our team struggled to keep up. Eli played midfield, and I watched him move differently than I'd ever seen. He wasn't trying to show off. He was reading the game, anticipating passes, positioning himself perfectly. At the 15-minute mark, the opposing team broke through our defense. Their forward had a clear shot on goal. Eli sprinted, faster than I'd ever seen him run, and slid in front of the shot. The ball ricocheted off his shin. He recovered instantly, passed it to Tyler, and the play reversed. The crowd erupted in surprised applause. Coach Travis looked stunned. 10 minutes later, Eli assisted on a goal. He didn't take the shot himself. He saw Tyler in a better position and passed. Unselfish. Smart. Beautiful. By halftime, the laughter had stopped. Parents were leaning forward, watching this kid in oversized pink-soled sneakers outplay everyone on the field. In the second half it happened. Eli intercepted a pass near midfield, dribbled past 2 defenders with moves I didn't know he had, and took the shot. The ball sailed into the upper corner of the net. Goal. The field fell silent for a heartbeat. Then the crowd exploded. Kids screamed his name. Parents stood. I cried openly, not caring who saw. And Coach Travis. His smirk disappeared completely. My son had just proven everything. When the final whistle blew, we'd won 3-1. Eli had scored 1 goal and assisted on the other 2. The reporter from the local newspaper approached him immediately, notebook out. "Great game, son. What's your name?" "Eli Monroe," he said quietly. Other parents crowded around, congratulating him. Kids who'd ignored him all season were high-fiving him now. The stadium announcer declared him player of the match. A small trophy was handed over. Eli held it awkwardly, like he didn't quite believe it was real. Coach Travis appeared beside him, arms slung over his shoulder, grinning for the cameras like a proud mentor. "That's my guy," he said loudly. "Always knew he had it in him." I felt rage boil in my chest. This man had humiliated my son for months, and now he was taking credit. Before I could say anything, a loud voice cut through the crowd. "Hey, Coach Travis." It was Diane, the mom from the diner conversation. She stood with her arms crossed, voice clear. "While we're all here celebrating, maybe you can tell us, where's that fundraiser money now?" The crowd went quiet. All eyes turned to Coach Travis. His smile faltered. I've been meaning to send out that report. It's been busy." $8,000, Travis," Diane pressed. "Where is it?" Other parents started murmuring, nodding. The moment of celebration twisted into something else. Accusation. Truth rising to the surface. Coach Travis's face reddened. He stammered something about receipts and delays. But the damage was done. The question was out there, and everyone was listening. Chaos erupted. Parents started shouting questions. "Did you really spend it on equipment? Why won't you show us the receipts? Where's the transparency?" Coach Travis tried to control the situation, raising his hands, insisting everything was fine. But his voice cracked. His confidence shattered. I stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching the folder I'd brought, just in case. Every document I'd collected over months. Every screenshot, every note, every piece of evidence showing money flowing in and nothing flowing out. This was the moment. I'd been waiting for the right time. When people were already questioning. When the lie was unraveling. When one more push would bring the whole thing down. I stepped forward, folder in hand. My voice was calm. "Teddy, I have something you all should see." The crowd turned. Coach Travis's eyes went wide when he saw the folder. "What is that?" someone asked. "Proof," I said simply. I walked to Diane and handed it to her. She opened it slowly, eyes scanning the pages. Her expression shifted from confusion to anger to disbelief. "Oh my God," she whispered. I looked at Coach Travis. He stared at me, and in that moment he knew. He knew I'd been watching, documenting, waiting. He said quietly, almost like a threat, "You don't know what you've started." I met his eyes and replied, "Yes, I do." Diane handed the folder to Troy, who read through it with his accountant eyes. Page after page, his face darkened. He passed it to another parent, then another. The principal of the local school, who'd attended the game, stepped forward. "May I see that?" Troy handed it over without a word. The principal read silently, flipping through screenshots of Venmo payments, cash donations recorded in the team Facebook group, fundraiser totals that didn't match any expense reports. Everything documented with dates and names. Finally, the principal looked up. His face was serious. "Coach Travis, I think we need to have a conversation. Privately." "This is ridiculous," Travis blustered. "This woman is just bitter because her kid doesn't get playing time. Her kid just won player of the match," someone shouted. "Yeah, in shoes held together by hope," another parent added. The crowd murmured agreement. The energy had shifted completely. "Travis," the principal said firmly. "Let's go. Now." Coach Travis looked around desperately, searching for allies. But the parents who used to laugh at his jokes, who handed him cash envelopes, who protected him, they were all staring at him with suspicion now. He'd lost them. He walked off with the principal, shoulders hunched. I stood there, shaking slightly, feeling like I'd just jumped off a cliff. Then I felt a small hand slip into mine. Eli stood beside me, still holding his trophy. He squeezed my hand and whispered, "You did good, Mom." News spread fast. By Monday morning, the story was all over the local Facebook groups. Parents who'd been suspicious for months suddenly felt safe speaking up. More evidence emerged. Other teams, other years, similar missing funds. The community that had enabled Coach Travis now turned against him. Parents who'd laughed at Eli now defended him fiercely. "That kid is incredible. Did you see him play?" And his mom. "She took down a thief." People I'd never spoken to messaged me with support. Parents apologized for not noticing sooner, for not speaking up. The school board launched an official investigation. Coach Travis was suspended immediately, pending the outcome. His Audi was repossessed 3 days later, which told us everything we needed to know about how he'd afforded it. I received a call from the league director. "Ms. Monroe, I want to apologize. We should have been paying closer attention. Thank you for bringing this forward." "Thank you for listening," I said quietly. That week, Eli went to practice under a temporary coach, a parent volunteer who actually cared about the kids. For the first time all season, Eli started a game. He played the full 90 minutes. When I picked him up afterward, he was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile I hadn't seen since before the humiliation started. "How was it?" I asked. "Perfect," he said. The investigation took 3 weeks. When the findings were released, they were damning. Forged receipts, false sponsorship claims, over $12,000 stolen across 2 years. Coach Travis had pocketed donations meant for equipment, uniforms, field maintenance, and scholarships. He'd manipulated parents, exploited their trust, and used kids as pawns to keep the money flowing. Criminal charges were filed. The news ran the story. Our small town buzzed with shock and anger. How had this happened under everyone's noses? How had no one noticed? But I knew how. People don't want to believe someone in authority would lie. They don't want to confront uncomfortable truths. And they definitely don't want to listen to a single mom with a folder full of evidence until that evidence becomes impossible to ignore. Eli and I watched the news coverage together. He didn't say much, just sat quietly eating cereal. When the segment ended, he asked, "Is it over now, Mom?" I thought about that question. The legal case wasn't over. The community healing wasn't over. But the fear, the humiliation, the weight of carrying this secret. "Yeah, baby," I said. "We can stop fighting now." He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his cereal. For him it really was that simple. The truth had won. Justice had come. Now he could just play soccer. I wished I could see the world that clearly. 2 weeks after the investigation concluded, we got a visitor. His name was Coach Felix Herrera, and he ran a competitive travel league across town. He showed up at our apartment on a Saturday morning, holding a clipboard and wearing a genuine smile. "Ms. Monroe, I'm Felix. I wanted to talk to you about Eli." I invited him in nervously. We sat at our small kitchen table. "I was at the charity match," he explained. "I saw your son play. That kid's got something special. Real game intelligence. The kind you can't teach." I felt my throat tighten. "Thank you. I'd like to offer Eli a spot on our team," he continued. "Full scholarship. Equipment, uniforms, tournament fees, everything covered. We practice 3 times a week, and we travel for competitions. It's a lot of work, but I think he's ready." I couldn't speak. I just stared at him. Scholarship. Everything covered. No more scraping together money. No more watching my son sit on benches while lesser players started. "There's no pressure," Coach Herrera added gently. "Talk it over with Eli. But I wanted you to know that kid's got fire. And I'd be honored to coach him." After he left, I found Eli in his room. I told him about the offer. His eyes went wide. "Really? Really?" He tackled me in a hug, laughing. When I looked out the window later, I saw a black Audi parked across the street. Coach Travis sat inside watching our building. He saw me looking and drove away slowly. Humiliated. Defeated. Exactly what he deserved. 3 weeks later, Coach Travis showed up at Marina's diner. I was wiping down tables after the lunch rush when he walked in. He looked smaller somehow, older. He sat at the counter and ordered coffee. I considered refusing to serve him. But I'm a professional. I poured his coffee silently. He stared into the cup for a long moment. Then he said, "I wanted to apologize." I didn't respond. "I know I messed up," he continued. "I let things get out of hand. I shouldn't have treated Eli the way I did. Or you." I set the coffee pot down and looked at him. Really looked at him. He wasn't apologizing because he meant it. He was apologizing because he'd been caught. Because his reputation was destroyed. Because this was the last move he had left. "Are you expecting me to forgive you?" I asked quietly. "No," he admitted. I needed to say it." He nodded. "Okay. You said it." I turned to walk away but paused. I looked back at him one more time. "You should have seen his face when Eli scored," I said softly. "Wearing my shoes. In front of everyone. You should have seen how proud he was. Not because he proved you wrong. But because he proved himself right." Coach Travis looked down. He left a $20 bill on the counter and walked out. I never saw him again. Eli's first game with his new team was on a crisp Saturday in December. The field was pristine, the uniforms sharp, the equipment professional. But when Eli opened his locker before the game, I saw something that made my heart stop. My old pink-soled sneakers sat on the top shelf. Clean now, laces tied neatly. He caught me looking and smiled. "For luck," he explained. "They got me through the hard part." I hugged him tightly. He played beautifully that day. Scored twice, assisted once, celebrated with teammates who respected him. When the game ended, I drove us home with the windows down, listening to him talk excitedly about plays and strategies. That night, as I tucked him into bed, something he usually said he was too old for, he looked at me seriously. "Mom." "Yeah, baby. Thank you for the shoes." I smiled through tears. "Anytime." As I turned off his light, I thought about everything we'd been through. The humiliation, the struggle, the fight for truth and justice. And I realized something important. Eli didn't just win a game that day, he wore my shoes. He won his name back. He won his dignity. He won the right to be seen for who he truly was. Not a poor kid with broken shoes, but a talented, determined, brave young man who refused to let the world define him by what he lacked. Those pink-soled sneakers sat in his locker now. A reminder not of humiliation, but of how far we'd come. Together. One goal at a time.